In our humble opinion, some of the most consistent and most likable characters in K-dramas are the food dishes. When you watch Korean television, you can't help but crave the delicious dishes you see on screen. In this episode of When East Meets South, we explore the representation of food in K-dramas, discuss the culture of food in Korea, and go in search of some food ourselves. Food plays a major part in so many K-dramas and Korean movies, and even in the K-pop world. I'm sure if you're an avid K-pop fan, you've seen your favorite idol do a mukbang at any point in time, which is quite literally videos of them eating food and reacting to it. It makes you very hungry, and watching dramas also makes you very hungry and really eager to try the food, which we'll talk about in a little bit about product placement and the government's role in promoting food too. But first, I really want to talk about the significance of food in Korea, and the significance of food and what it means for the different regions of Korea as well, because that is something that may be lost if you're just a casual viewer of K-dramas. Food is very central, and food does really symbolize this ideology of like family and sharing and communal eating. That's very much represented in Korea. And so dramas, I think, when you have characters that assemble over food, is really paying homage to that idea of community eating and sharing thoughts and pains and things that happen in life over a meal, which is, I think, reflected in a lot of other Asian cultures as well. Deep, do you want to jump in and talk about South Asia a little bit?
Yeah, this is again where this cultural confluence between South and East Asia cultures. I think like food is a really important part of South Asian cultures too. It's and again, there's a lot of it is communal. It's like, and I think some of it is also because some of these foods, I mean, both in the Korean foods and Indian foods, in my case, like it takes a long time to prep and prepare and make. And so it's usually like a family activity or a communal activity to actually cook food. So it's got that sort of implication in a way that, a lot of modern cuisines or modernized cuisines don't. And so I think that's part of the community. And so this is the best part. Like I love watching a lot of South Asian movies or like, Korean dramas or even like K-pop shows, and then getting hungry like right after, like it because there's so much food. To your point about different kinds of cuisine or sub cuisines or in Korean dramas, I watched Hometown Cha Cha Cha, which is on Netflix, and that, I mean, granted, I haven't watched as many dramas as you have, so this is coming from my limited experience of watching Korean dramas. That food was very different from the kind of soul food, like, as a not SOUL, but SEOUL.
Oh,
So sort of like urban food, let's say. So like, for example, like, when they go out, college students are eating tteokbokki or like, pajeon or one of these street side foods. And so, you see that represented often. But in Hometown Cha Cha Cha, there was so much seafood because it happens in like a seaside town away from like an urban center. So a lot of the food there was like seafood based, and not just fish based, but like seafood based, like squid or urchins. So that show most of the time I was just like, what is this thing that they're showing? Where can I find a recipe? And one of the, sort of the, not the main character, but the side character who's important to the story, she's a restaurant owner. And the two of them are restaurant owners. One is a Chinese restaurant owner and one's like a traditional Korean restaurant owner. And so they're also like talking to each other about food all the time, which I loved.
And so it takes a discerning eye to realize that like that is an example of regionality in cuisines being represented in K dramas, because if you kind of go in thinking like all Korean food is the same, and you just think that they're, for some reason because they're by the sea that they're eating seafood, like yes, that's part of the case, but it's highly regionalized because of its geographic location and reflective of the fact that Korea was at some point three separate kingdoms. Localities are really important, like where your hometown is, like hometown cha-cha, for example. Your hometown means something almost to a level that's like not represented in Western context, and that develops from this like splinter kingdom time period in Korea. So it does really take someone who's thinking about it, and now you all can think about it this way, of how that food is represented in Korea, because it's not just all tteokbokki. No, I mean tteokbokki is great, but I love tteokbokki. It's one of my favorite foods. But it's almost surprising the plurality of food that's represented in different regions. Sundae, for example, is North Korean, and it's not something that you see regularly in K dramas. But like I think in Crash Landing, do they have Sundae in Crash Landing? Yeah, in Crash Landing they have Sundae, and that's like a direct like correlation to where they're supposed to be geographically. I'm getting really hungry just talking about all these foods already. Sundae is also one of my favorite foods. So yeah, I want to go find it now.
The I think I've been introduced, and you'll see some of this in the B-roll. I was from the minute I've started watching Korean dramas, I've been listening to different dramas, different characters going out and eating tteokbokki. Like, and so when Sharon and I kind of met, I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to go eat tteokbokki. And so my first time having tteokbokki was with Karen, Korean restaurant in DC with Sharon. That's what I was trying to say there. But like my first experience with Sharon, which is so special. But like I am in love with tteokbokki in a way that I have a few food items. Usually they're Indian that are high up on my top list that are my comfort foods, and tteokbokki is getting there.
이거 좋겠다. 저 쌀이야 밀이야? 밀이랑 쌀이랑 섞여.
Something that Deepthi and I had wanted to talk about that we kind of like were bopping around was the depiction of Western food in K dramas too. To me, it seems that Western food is depicted in one of two ways for the most part. One, it's the direct like juxtaposition to Korean food being the maybe highbrow cosmopolitan international food. So if they go to a steakhouse, for example, it's very like high class steakhouse, and maybe the naive female lead doesn't know how to order or doesn't really know how to eat it because this Western food is just so highbrow.
선배, 제가 분명히 돈이 없다고 말씀드렸을 텐데요.
내가 사는 거야.
아, 그렇다면 까르보나라요.
The other one, which opens up a whole can of worms, is product placement and Western companies in Korea paying probably a pretty like dime, like a pretty good price to be featured as like the central, like if you watch K-drama that has a sponsorship, that place is going to be the place they go like every episode. And Korean companies are doing it too, like Korean chicken and Korean beers have it featured, but like the sweet spot for this was like early to mid 20 teens was like the Subways being featured or the Domino's or the Papa John's.
주문하신 뇌물 나왔습니다.
좋아.
Everywhere, Domino's and Subway are just everywhere. I mean, there are other product placements too. Like I watched I don't remember which one it was. Nevertheless.
Nevertheless, yeah.
There's a product placement for Charlotte Tilbury, the cosmetic brand, and I see some cosmetics, sort of like high-end cosmetic brands in product placements in some. So it's not just food, but foods, especially like quick food, like fried chicken or Subway or pizzas. Those seem to be the ones that are really advertising, like chain fast foods.
Yeah, and it's like one of two ways. It's either it's like the super highbrow or it's like the quick fast food option, but like it still works because we both live here in the US and it's like gone to Papa John's, Domino's, Subway, however many times. But when I watch K-dramas, I'm like, is it different? Should I be trying this? Like they put like corn on their pizzas, which is a very Korean thing to do, but not something I've ever had. And I'm like,
in India too, they put corn in India too on pizzas. But this is not part of the product placement, but we need to probably also at some point talk about Glocal foods, like how McDonald's, for example, in India, they have a thing called Maharaja burger, which is actually super tasty. It's like a veggie patty, because there are a lot of vegetarians in India, so they have like a veggie aloo, like potato burger, which is delicious.
Sounds so good.
It's actually delicious. But like they have they kind of localize it, like Pizza Hut. Oh my God, Pizza Hut pizzas in US, okay, I like them. In India, achari chicken tikka pizza, keema achari pizza, they're just brilliant, like brilliant Indian flavored pizzas from Pizza Hut. Mind-blowing. So there's something to be said about localizing of foods as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And we probably will get into this in a future episode too, but like even the aesthetics of like a localized restaurant like that, like I remember I was in Indonesia a few years ago and they're like beautiful Pizza Huts that they had, like 4 stories, like steel glass, like beautiful artisanal lights. And you're like, that does not look like the Pizza Hut. Or there's like a KFC right next door that looks like the same as that. I was like, oh my gosh.
I swear that was one of my biggest disappointments when I first moved to the US. And I was like, that's a Pizza Hut? Like, I mean, it's like, I was like, what happened? Like, what happened to KFC? And then I was just like, that's a KFC? I mean, one of the biggest disappointments of moving to the US and realizing what they really look like.
That's really interesting though, because you had like a reverse Glocal like phenomenon happen to you.
Yeah. Because pizzas and KFCs are still sort of like not high-end food in South Asia, but they cost more than your local cafes, and it's you're spending some money, especially if you're a student and you want to go to KFC. You're not going to go to KFC every day because it costs money. So or even Pizza Hut pizzas cost money. I mean, or any pizzas cost money. So a student is not having pizza and burgers from KFC and Pizza Hut like every single day in South Asia. It's not the same. So yeah. Rude awakening.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So even knowing that it's like a local product and knowing that I know what the like exported product originated as, watching these K-dramas, I'm like, oh, I want to try it because it still looks good and the product placement works. And going back to Nevertheless quickly, I thought it was hilarious because that was one of the first times I had seen in a K-drama the product placement of American and or Western products that like influencers really heavily push. So it was like the Charlotte Tilbury, and she used a Dyson
the air, yeah.
I was like, first of all, she's an art student. How is she affording a $600 blow dryer?
Or Charlotte Tilbury.
But yeah, that's something that Korean dramas, I think it's because I've said this before, you go in with the idea that reality is suspended just a little bit and that there is an infusion of overt campiness that you're like, though I know that they are in this Subway because Subway paid to be the sponsor of this drama, I would like to go to the Subway.
But also I want to talk about the flip side of it, right? For me, sometimes it's a jarring pull out of that reality that they're creating for me, right? Because I know Subway, I've been to a Subway, I know Domino's, I've eaten Domino's, right? So in the middle of this sort of like, love fest that I'm watching, suddenly they start, talking about Domino's pizza, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing to me? Like, I was in it, and now, you're talking about Domino's, and I don't want to talk about Domino's. I want to go back to my romance. Like, what's happening? So sometimes I think, it's done. Sometimes I think it's almost always very artificial, which I realize, say, calling something artificial in like a fictional production is just weird. But it's like pulls me back to reality, because I identify these things as Western sometimes. Like Subway, for example, I think of as American. And so having it in a Korean drama, and as it would if I was watching an Indian movie and I saw somebody promoting Subway, right? Like it kind of takes me away from the moment or the drama. So I do appreciate when Korean dramas keep their sponsorships to the very end of the episode when the entire story is almost completely told. I particularly appreciate that as a viewer.
Yeah, I see that. I see that. It's,
Yeah.
I mean, I take it as like it's like almost an additional layer of the campiness and the additional layer of like the like I not eye roll, but eye roll. Like the she like slipped and fell on a puddle and she's falling, flailing, and the guy caught her. And it happens to be that she was like walking into the subway to get her sandwich. Like it's like almost like another like element of, oh my gosh, this is so campy.
That's very well done camp though, where it's integrated into the storyline. Like there was so in Hometown Cha Cha Cha, that entire show has so much like sort of concentration of cuisine and sort of culinary preparations and talking about food and eating food, which are very sort of, at least to my mind, regional Korean cuisine based. And then at the end they bring in Domino's and start eating Domino's, and I'm like, what happened here? Like, come on, I know. And they're like going, oh, this pizza is delicious. And I'm like, yeah, but you were eating seafood. Go back to the squid. I want to see more of the squid. And so, I think that one hurt a little bit that they ended up eating pizza at the end of the series.
In those depictions too, something that I'm curious about is this may seem like 180, but I promise it connects, is the noises that they make in K-dramas while eating. And like idols do it in their mukbangs too, but like even at something like a pizza where they bite into it and they go, oh, like to indicate that they enjoy it. I'm like, I wonder if I were to like, if when I go to Korea and I'm hanging out and eating food with family and potentially any friends that I make in Korea, which might not be a lot, but say hi if you see me. Will we be making those noises too?
Okay. Can I ask an ignorant question?
Sure. I don't know if I have an answer, but sure.
So, and this I see in Korean dramas, but also like, K-pop stars doing mukbang. So 2 questions. I have 2 questions. The first one is, there is, how in the West, you're like, you kind of say, oh, you eat small bites and chew with your mouth closed. Koreans don't want to do either of those things. So is that real? Because if it's real, I'm all for it.
Yep, it's definitely real. It's a shove a lot of food in your mouth and chew with your mouth open, which I can't do. Some people chew with their mouth closed. I think there was actually a YouTube video that I watched, or maybe it was like a fan list that someone put up of the idols that they've observed that actually chew with their mouth closed because it's so like rare. But yeah, that's a thing. That's the thing.
Okay. The second ignorant question. So I was watching my favorite band, VI's, the reality show that they have. And so they're obviously eating food. A lot of their activities eating food. Like my bias, Kim Yo-han, like that's his favorite thing to do. I think like he's always eating, like any show, anywhere I think he's just he just eats. But they were eating. And so they were doing this competition to see how much food they can put in their mouths at the same time, like the quantity of food. So like, Donghan is sort of the master eater who can put like a lot of food in his mouth and keep chewing and, swallowing it. And he was trying to get other members to, sort of do a mock competition. And so is that a thing where how much food you can put in your mouth is at one time. Is that like a cultural thing that people are proud of?
So I've never witnessed it personally. Again, I'm part of a diasporic community and I'm second generation. So like it might be in contemporary Korea that that's a thing. Like I've definitely seen ATs do that kind of same thing too, where they like challenge each other to eat as much or like to stuff as much as they can in the mouth, or like it's like become a thing where a couple of the members like can eat a full cup ramen in 2 or 3 bites. Like
Yeah.
it's so yeah. If I witness it, I will include it in my vlogs, my Korea vlogs when I'm there in the summer. So I'll let you know.
Random people eating food and
Excuse me. Excuse me. Can you just show me how you eat? And is it a thing to shove as much food in your mouth as you can as a point of pride?
Yeah, I'm really curious about that because I respect that, and I think I appreciate that kind of commitment to eating in a very real way. As a 100% foodie, I'm so in for that trend or those trends.
I like the way that you phrased it, a commitment to eating, a commitment to food, which I think to kind of wrap this and this conversation all up is that's like the centrality of how food is portrayed in K-dramas and in Korean media. And the government has even put an emphasis on it, saying that it's the next like soft power frontier that they're pursuing internationally. It's a commitment to food. It's a perfect way.
I am all for it.
Me too. We'll go out more and we'll eat more food. In the meantime, though, enjoy our food adventures. So it is Deepthi's first time having some of this street food, having some KBBQ, and enjoying it. And what are your thoughts?
Looking forward to it.
Okay.
And
she's busy looking at directions,
yes.
So
sorry.
I should stop distracting her. Say hello.
Oh, it's facing me. I didn't realize that thing is facing me. It's like
Going back down. In the tteokbokki is made of a rice cake. The tteok is rice cake, and it's a kind of tteok called kare tteok, which explains like the cylindrical like shape of it. And then the other things in there are like fish cakes. This is green onion, and it's all in this like it's not kimchi sauce. It is a chili pepper sauce, but it is actually a fish broth based sauce.
Oh.
And the other dishes we have here, so we have the tteokbokki, we have a corn cheese. Koreans love adding cheese to dishes.
Yes.
I've
noticed that in some dramas where they're like, we just add cheese, so they go to a convenience store.
They just like add cheese to everything. It's a thing. And then Korean pancakes, pachons, are a flour-based street food appetizer that has like scallions or green onions in it, and it can be thematic. So the one that we have is a kimchi one, so it'll have kimchi in it, but you can have seafood ones, you can have veggie ones. It's a good drunk food. It's a good bar.
It's a bar food.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All these, right?
Yeah, all these are pretty bar foody.
Yeah.
Get some beautiful.
Oh, really good. Okay. I'm all for this.
Okay. Good.
Do you like it?
Thank you.
It's great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. It's so slippery. You did it.
Okay. Let's do some.
Does it live up to your standards? Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is really good.
It tastes like home.
Oh, okay. That's the highest level of compliment.
Yeah, it's
You
good.
know, you can get it right.
The pageant is
So the corn cheese. I think this reminds me of something you get in Indian streets, where we don't have cheese in it, but they have a lot of butter in it, and it's like hot, just like this, and then they put like the chaat masala on top. So it's like tangy and a little spicy, and you can have various kinds of masalas on it. So you can have like a lime garlic version or like a chaat version. And so this is very reminiscent of an Indian street food that you get in India. So I'm all about this. I do like this.
Say hi, Deepthi.
Oh, hi. Busy putting up stories.
So this is all different Korean banchans, which are all side dishes, and then pap, which is rice. Got your salad, dipping sauces, got your kimchi, your marinated cucumbers. There's more fish cake there, and this is mashed potato. And then, got bean sprouts over there. Go for it.
It's really my kind of alcohol. I think I need to adopt and be Korean at this point. Really. Like I like everything that I have tasted. Which is not a surprise. But like this is a surprise. I wasn't expecting to like soju. I expected it to be like tequila. And it's not. I love the steel place because it's so reminiscent of India.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, like you don't eat a lot of. Are you trying to mukbang?
Yeah, I'm trying to catch you eating.
I can do that for you. What I was going to say is we need to make slurping noises, like when we're eating, like in the.
We should do that with the soup. Oh no, the trademark noise. Here, if you switch me. Trademark noise is
There's no ASMR. I have to come real.
is that noise?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
roadies.